Hello, everybody. My name is Zachary Fredette, and I am here to answer a community question that I thought was pretty interesting. Kenny Mead on the Xpression Support Forum, I guess it's a forum, asked how to scroll some text within a larger scene, and he's presented this identification of an NFL graphic that has the matchup playing. And I'm going to assume that it's scrolling like it is shown here. So of course he knows how to get the team lanes and team names and stuff like that, but how to embed an actual crawl. It's very interesting. A solution was presented here, where you're using render views to get something, copied in, make it a crawl, yada yada yada. Interesting solution. I thought I wanted to take a stab at it to see if we can fit it all nicely into one scene. And I'm happy to say I think I've done that. Don't know how elegant it is, but hey, we're going to give it a shot. So here's how it looks. Pretty darn seamless. This text right here is to show where you can put your text if you need to change it. Obviously, that's the only thing that's actually exposed as far as published, because you don't want anybody else touching the actual scrolling part. But yeah, of course this will change. It doesn't matter how big the scene is. It doesn't matter what angle your slant is at. It should automatically figure out what to do, how to do it. So if I say Owls versus Cougars, ta-da. Of course, the rate is very easy to change. I'll show you guys how to do that. And I'll go ahead and break down the scripting that allows this to happen as well. Let's go ahead and jump into our layout and see how the scene is actually created. Close this right now. We have obviously our starting light, and then I have the two quads in a background. That's just actually creating the visual images. Obviously that would be created completely separately. But here's the beef of the operation. We have an anchor group, our loop text, and set text. The anchor group right here is where we're going to set the angle that this is actually slanted at. So if you see here, everything is actually slanted at -58. If I make this something like -80, I haven't tested this, so we're gonna see this live. -80, screw it. I'm not even gonna fix it. -80, boom. All right. Take it offline, put it back online. There you go. All right, so and you can position the group X and Y however you want it to be. I've just traditionally tried to put it where the text is at the bottom right hand corner. If we disable this, you can see that the text is kind of just aligned right down there. So the anchor group is encompassing our loop text. It's what actually sets our rotation, so that in our loop text, this right here is the piece de resistance, our continuous animation. The waveform is sawtooth. This is what sets how our animation actually behaves with regards to physically moving the object. Sawtooth, it'll show you this nice little graph here to show you what we're talking about. But sawtooth is just straight up 0 to 100 and then stop and go back to 0. That's how we want to do it for something that's looping. And we're going to try and create it so that it's seamless, so that ideally 100 looks identical to 0. The mode is asymmetric. What does that mean? That means that we're not this. So symmetric would be -100 to 100. This is more useful for sine waves and stuff like that. Asymmetric would be 0 to 100. That's what we want. The channel position that we want is position X. Why X? Is an X left or right? Well, if you remember, this text is located within the group, and the group is the one that's rotated. So the text right here is actually sliding along its own x-axis, and then the group is what's rotated. That keeps us from having to think about two axes instead of just one. The amplitude and amplitude offset, don't worry about that. We're actually going to change that ourselves automatically. Cycle is what you want to change, how quickly you want something to behave. If I come back, even in a cycle or two, you can see it in our continuous animation right there. Super quick, 600. Continuous animation is not really going to show you exactly what it looks like. So play it out, mess around with it, see what you want to do. Pause, I believe that's if you want to add a pause at the end. We don't. And then the sync would be to reset. You can set it to external clock if you want. Don't do that. Final thing that we have right here is our set text. Now, obviously, in production, this would be hidden. For demonstration purposes, I'm going to keep it live. But you'll notice that this is where our actual published text is. And we have a nice little script down there as well. That's going to be pretty much where all the brains of the operation is. I don't have anything in visual logic. Everything here is done with scripting. It's just easier that way for me. There's always multiple ways of doing things in Xpression, but this is how I'm going to do it. So let's crack open the script, right? If we right click and we go to edit script events, on set text is where we're going to be editing everything. I'm going to pop up this. We're going to walk through this code. On set text is saying whenever I or something else changes this text, run this script through and let it do that, right? And the very final thing, if you haven't changed what's called the handle Boolean that is passed through, pretty much that's just telling the program, at the end of the function, it's going to say, hey, did you independently handle this? If you say yes, then it's going to say, okay, cool. If not, it's going to continue doing what it normally does. We want it to continue doing what it normally does. So what we're going to do is we're going to define a couple of things. This is what's happening at the top of the script. We are defining the loop animation. That's the continuous animation we just made. We're defining the loop text. That's the text object that has our looping animation on it. And we are defining the anchor group. That is the group that we have set our rotation on. We're going to define all three of the angles that the anchor group is rotated at. Really, obviously, we're only using one. I just did all three just in case. We're just going to ignore X and Y in the end. And then I went ahead and defined the scene height as the actual scene height. You don't have to do that. You can just use scene.height if you want to, but I did it just to make everything look pretty. So what happens there is that we've made all of our objects, then we continue on to actually pulling those objects down from being in the either to being something that we can actually touch and edit. So the very first line is scene, get object by name. We're talking to our scene. We want to get an object by the name. That object is called loop text. We want to put it into our reference of loop text. Then same thing with our anchor group. The object is called anchor group. We have named it in our code anchor group. Associate those two things. Finally, obviously, continuous animations do not have names, but they do have track numbers, and it starts with 0. Since we only have one track, we're getting track 0, loop text, that's our object that the continuous animation is on. We're going to get continuous animation, and we're going to tell it to put into our loop animation reference. So now we get to the fun part, and we get to law of sines. We're going to get out our rotation. We tell it to plop all three items into their respective containers that we've set previously up above. And then we're going to define the z angle in terms of radians. First things first, we take the absolute value of the group. As we have here, our group is rotated at an angle of -58. Now, technically, you can do sine on negative number. You'll get a negative number in return, and then we'll just have to make everything positive there. I figured it was just easier to make it positive right here by the absolute value. We're going to multiply it by pi, divide it by 180, and that's how you convert degrees, which is what Ross Xpression gives you, into radians, which is how Visual Basic wants to convert or do trigonometric functions on. So the next thing, we're going to get the required length. And what that is if we imagine a triangle, we know the height of the scene. We want to get the hypotenuse. That is how long our text object needs to be to make sure that each piece is covered. So we're going to get that in pixels, right? For 58 degrees at at 1080 height for a scene comes out to around 1200 pixels or something like that. You know, I mean, nearly. You can look at how long this is and make a good guess that's 1200 pixels. But if we need to change the angle, then obviously that number would change. Or if we are using a scene that's, say, 4K or something like that. Our new width, the next line, new width is how we are going to get the width of what our text object will take up. So we have not changed the text object that we're editing right now yet. That has not happened. But we want to know how wide it will become. That's what we get right here. Then we're going to figure out how many duplicates do we need to add to this looping text to make sure that there's, once again, you don't see any white space behind, you don't see any white space in front. So we divide the required length by our new width. That would probably give us something like, 2.5. We need it 2.5 times. Well, really what that means is 3. So we take the ceiling of that. So 2.5, the ceiling of 2.5 is 3. That means even if it's 2.1, you're getting 3. If it's 1.9, you're getting 2. And then we're going to tack 1 on the end just for safe measure. And because we're going to do a little cheating here, we're going to actually scoot our continuous animation back so that it can animate to completion and be at our 0 mark, essentially. So then we're going to empty out the text that's in our loop text. And for the amount of times that's in our required duplicates, right? So pretty much what this first line is doing is saying, hey, start thinking of a number, start at 1, count up to our required duplicates. And we're going to do everything that's in between our 4 and our next inside here. What is that? Well, we're going to add on our text that's meant to be added into our loop text and keep going like that. And so, it will do it 1, 2, 3, 4. We'll have 3 or 4 copies of our loop text in there, and then that's all it does. Finally, in our loop animation, this is our continuous animation. If we look right here, I'll click right here. This is what we're editing. This loop animation right here. We're going to set the amplitude. That is, how much do we actually want this continuous animation to move in pixels. We're going to set that to our new width. And if you remember, new width is the length of 1 instance of our text. We're going to set the amplitude offset. So this is an amplitude offset is, imagine plus 50 or minus whatever. We're going to set that to 0 minus our new width. So we're pretty much starting 1 behind. And that's it. From there, Xpression has our built-in continuous animation that will continuously animate. Essentially what we've done is we have taken this, made sure that we have enough copies of our text to fill up the height of the screen at whatever angle you have it at. And then we have it set automatically, our continuous animation, to, run through and make a beautiful, seamless looking loop for us. So, once again, obviously this text, if you wanted this text to be done automatically, you could have it done with actual setting text. That's fine as well. But just do keep in mind that you'll have to use your own delimiter. Because if you notice, whenever we were adding text into our loop text, we didn't say put a space after each time. We didn't say, add a dot after each time. Because I wanted to leave that up. That's much easier to do on the front end whenever you're creating your text to be looped than it is to try and put it into the code. And if you have to change it, you have to go in and change the code. Don't want to do that. So, ta-da. There you go. Here's how you make a looping continuous animation from one text line. Create a new scene. Add in any background objects you want and generally set your scene. Create a group and name it anchor group. Create a text object in the group named loop text. Rotate the anchor group to the desired Z rotation and move it to position it in place. On the loop text object, create a continuous animation set to sawtooth, asymmetric, position X, and adjust the cycle to how fast you want it. Unpublish the loop text object. Create a new text object outside of the group named set text that's the same font as loop text. right-click Set Text and edit script events. Copy and paste the code that's in the video description into the onSetText function. Compile the script. Hook the text box up to other features and unpublish as necessary. My name is Zachary Fredette. Thank you for watching.